Hello, everybody. We'd like to welcome everyone to the committee's confirmation hearings today. And the first person up for confirmation will be Michael Robinson for the position of Public Service Commissioner, a reappointment. Mr. Luthi, tell us about Mr. Robinson and the executive. Come on up, Mr. Robinson.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity. My name is Randall Luthi, Chief Energy Advisor for Governor Gordon, and it's my pleasure to introduce Mike Robinson, who is seeking his reappointment to the Public Service Commission. Mr. Robinson has been on the PSC since 2019 and is currently serving as the Deputy Chairman. Prior to his service in the Public Service Commission, Mike was in the Wyoming Attorney General's office. He was a Senior Assistant Attorney General providing legal advice in both the Civil and the Water and Natural Resources Division. Before his time with the AG's office, he was a staff attorney for 3 Wyoming Supreme Court justices, and he's been a staff attorney for the Wyoming Public Service Commission before as well. Mr. Chairman, the governor is very, very pleased to renominate Mr. Robinson. He has served the people of Wyoming well as a commissioner, and his confirmation would be most welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Luthi. Any questions for Mr. Luthi? Thank you. Well, Mr. Robinson, we're very glad to have you here, and we do have this unusual process where we administer an oath, and so the oath is: do you swear or affirm that the testimony you give before this committee will be the truth?
I do.
Well, then you're in like Flint. So please, I'd give you a chance to make an opening statement, and then we'd be happy to have the committee members ask you questions. So go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I didn't prepare a specific opening statement, but I just wanted to say it has been a real pleasure to serve the state of Wyoming at the commission for these past 4 years. And it has been quite an educational experience for me, and being involved in issues of great importance to the state that I think are only going to, that importance is only going to become more critical in the coming years. And I'm looking forward to continuing in this position, and I stand for any questions from the committee.
All right, I'll open it up to the committee now. Thank you, Mr. Robinson. We'll go to Senator Landon and then Senator Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Robinson, thank you for being here. I guess, given your experience on the commission, I would be interested in a 30,000-foot view. Can you take us 5 years down the road and reflect on those 5 years? What are we running into, and where are the hot spots? What's going to come to you in these next 5 years? And then the follow-up question would be, what can this panel do to help mitigate or sideboard or take care of these issues for the next 5 years?
Mr. Robinson, Commissioner Robinson.
Mr. Chairman, Senator, I think looking down the road, I think there are several critical issues that the commission is going to face, the most important of which is probably grid reliability.
Let's pull that microphone real close to you because it's
Apologies.
old.
Yes, I was going to say grid reliability, as the committee is well aware, in the increasing penetration and use of renewables and the drive towards a carbon-free grid raises many issues, and in particular, the questions of reliability. Having electricity is one of the most critical things to our society. How that's going to play out over the next 5 years will be interesting. As we're all aware, there are many initiatives. This body, legislature, has passed several laws, including SF 159 and House Bill 200, both of which are designed to protect our coal fleet and the stability that provides to the grid. And how that plays out over the next 5 years will be one of the most interesting and things that we will see. The other critical issues that I see are the allocation of costs among multi-jurisdictional utilities, the increasing use of natural gas for purposes of generation. That's going to place pressures upon consumer use of gas. And I think they're all interrelated issues, but I see those as the most critical. And, you know, it's hard to see from here what this body could do to mitigate that, other than what you've been doing so far. Listening to interested parties, having issues on the interim agenda. I think those are critical to both us as regulators and to the legislature as the setter of policy.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Senator Scott.
Mr. Chairman, following up on that, and it was a good lead into what I wanted to pursue, as my model of what's happening, and I want you to correct me if I'm wrong, is that the grid is gradually becoming unstable because of too many renewables, and we don't have enough power necessarily when the sun isn't shining the way or night, and the wind isn't blowing, and we have the risk of just plain running out of power and having, frankly, massive blackouts on occasion. So that's seems to me a grid-wide issue that we're seeing. And second, with the big utility that does have a lot of market on the West Coast, it seems to me the strategy is to let that happen because of the West Coast regulations, and then come in and try to cure it with having closed the coal plants, which are depreciated and they can't get much return on. Come in and build a bunch of new fancy things, whether it's natural gas or nuclear or storage batteries or electrolysis or whatever, to deal with the instability in the grid. And so my questions to you are, first, is that an accurate, am I understanding the nature of the problem that we're facing? And second, what the hell do we do about it?
Go ahead,
Mr. Chairman, Senator. I don't think anybody wants to see the grid fail. There probably are differences in opinions as to precisely what is going on with the grid and causing blackouts, whether it's the increasing penetration of renewables and the closing, combined with the early closure of coal plants, versus some who may see the weather playing a role in that, climate change and things like that. What do we do about it? I think as regulators, we use the laws that you've passed to ensure that, to the extent that utilities in Wyoming want to close plants, they have to go through the 159 process, and they also have to go through the HB 200 process for carbon capture. Carbon capture is certainly one tool in our kit that can be used to ensure stability, in addition to its other uses of the carbon stream. Beyond that, that's a subject that is being debated every day, not only at our commission, but at commissions across the country. And it will be interesting to see how it plays out.
Senator Scott, follow up.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. And I think one of the things we're looking for, as you guys deal with this all the time, we're looking for some guidance as to what kind of laws do we need, because what we've got now doesn't seem to be working. It isn't getting the job done. And so what do we need to do differently? And it seems to me there's two separate problems, one of which is grid reliability, and the other of which is with the large utility, it looks like the rates are going to go through the ceiling. What do we do about that to insulate ourselves? And specifically, should we remain in the multi-state protocol? And if we decide it's not in our interest to remain in the multi-state protocol, how do we reach and implement such a decision? Is that something you can do with regulatory authority under existing law, or do we need to pass some new law? As a lawyer, what does it take to get out from that, under that, if we need to?
And Commissioner Robinson, if you don't mind, for people that might be listening online, they wouldn't have any idea what the multi-state protocol is. So if you could start by saying what that is, if you don't mind.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator. Yes, the multi-state protocol is an agreement among the 6 states that are served by one of our largest utilities, Oregon. Washington.
You can actually use their name in committee where.
It's Pacific Core,
Yeah.
operating as Rocky Mountain Power in Wyoming. They provide electric service to customers in 6 states: California, Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Utah, and Wyoming. At its most basic level, what the protocol does is allocate the costs of system-wide facilities, generation, transmission among the 6 states. It's generally based upon a formula that takes into account each state's percentage of the total load for the company. In Wyoming, I think that's about 16%. So if it's considered a system asset that's allocated among all 6 states, Wyoming's share of the cost would be about 16%. That protocol served well for a long time, but with many states adopting different energy policies with different goals, that has become less tenable. Apologies. And so it's a subject of negotiation right now among the company and representatives from the utilities and representatives from the utility commissions and other interested parties to try to reach a new agreement that will be able to take into account the differing energy philosophies. And as the senator indicated, this is a critical process. And I don't know how it's going to play out. What I can tell you is that when an agreement is reached on the multi-state protocol, it comes to us for approval. And so we do have a lot of maneuverability, flexibility when it comes to how that will play out for Wyoming's ratepayers and be able to protect them, in particular from perhaps bearing costs that they shouldn't, because they are the direct result of decisions made for other states for their reasons that don't directly or indirectly benefit Wyoming's ratepayers.
So Scott, did you get what you needed?
Mr. Chairman,
Back to your microphone, you can have one more follow-up.
yeah, trying to follow up, it seems to me we've got 2 sets of issues. One is the total reliability of the grid, and that will affect, will it not, all the power in the state, because if the grid's so tied in that if we were to have trouble in it, even companies that had no formal stake in the West Coast manipulations could be affected. Is that correct? And second, as a matter of law, if we decide that the 5-state or the multi-state protocol is no longer in our interest, do you need additional legislation to make that decision? Can you make it on your own? What are the legal consequences? How do we go about that if we can't get a reasonable agreement that we can buy into on the redo?
Commissioner.
Mr. Chairman, Senator, to answer the second one first, I don't know if I can sit here today and say, as a matter of law, what would happen, because I don't know how that's going to play out. They may reach an agreement I mean, they're still having meetings and are talking about different approaches to allocation. So we don't know if there will be an agreement or if basically the protocol will go away and then each state would deal individually with the utility. I guess it just depends on how that plays out, whether we will need any assistance or not. As far as the grid, what we're talking about here is just the Western grid, excluding the Eastern grid and ERCOT. There are right now a lot of regional initiatives looking at various ways to make the grid more reliable. There's the Western Resource Adequacy program that is attempting to ensure adequate capacity and resources for the grid. Many utilities, including several that operate here in Wyoming, are participating in that. And then, of course, there are other initiatives out there that are floating, such as regional transmission organizations, day-ahead markets, those kind of things. And one of the things we've done to try to stay on top of this is that we have, through this recent budget approved by the legislature, has added a new position who is dedicated solely to regional issues. That person will work closely with all three commissioners. And this, I think participation by the commissioners and our staff in these regional organizations is critically important. And that's one way that we can stay fully informed, and that therefore we can also inform you of any issues that we run up against, whatever those might be. I think, like I said, at this time, I don't know what those will be right now. It could be an actual formation of an RTO, which should be a major sea change in how electricity transmission is organized in the West. Both Nevada and Colorado have passed laws mandating that their utilities join an RTO by the end of 2030. So that is going to be one of the more critical issues that we see over the next 5 to 6 years.
Okay. Senator Burrow, anything? A couple of follow-ups. RTO, did you define what it was? It's a regional transmission authority. And then do we still worry that the California ISO, is that still a possibility in the mix? It had been, and that was an independent system operator that the state of California established. They'd like to grow outside the boundaries of California. And so all of these things are kind of coming in play, but I don't know where that one is at this moment.
Mr. Chairman, the governance structure of CAISO is still very much an issue.
Yeah. Let me turn to just the commission itself. And we're going to spend a lot of time with the commission this interim. I think at least from our side of the house, we're kind of thinking that electricity issues are going to be important. So we'll hear from the OCA and the commission a lot. But does the commission have the resources it needs to face these challenges in the future? And tell me about that. And how many people are at the commission? I know it's one of the smallest commissions in the country, and I used to work for one of the biggest. So I'm always amazed at what you guys get done. So to you, how are dockets moving along? Are there delays? People get things turned around? Just generally operationally, where are we at?
Mr. Chairman, yes, we are one of the smallest, if not the smallest commission. I believe we have about 32 employees, and that might include, I believe that includes OCA. But several of those positions are unfilled, and we're no different than many other state agencies having difficulty filling positions. And as you are well aware, utility regulation is kind of a highly specific, high specialized area. And so once we hire somebody, there's still a steep learning curve. So it takes several years to get somebody really up to speed. So In question your resources, we're probably at the minimum level right now.
In fact, ladies and gentlemen, one of our colleagues, Senator Brennan, her husband works at the commission, right? As a rate analyst, I understand.
Mr. Chairman, that's correct.
Yeah. Small Cheyenne world. I don't have any other questions. Does anybody else? All right, stand by. Let's see if anybody else would like to address the committee about the issue of the appointment of Michael Robinson. Is there anybody online? Mr. Bush, you're welcome. We got an extra seat if you don't mind sitting next to the chief executive's office.
He enjoys it.
It's always a pleasure.
Please introduce yourself, Mr. Bush. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. David Bush, Black Hills Energy. Just wanted to endorse the reappointment of Commissioner Robinson. As you have gone through with your questioning here, these are really deep questions that we have in front of the state, and the expertise at the Public Service Commission and the OCA are critical for us working with them. So not to belabor it, but we just really need people that have experience and can really continue to move the state forward and certainly move our electric grid forward.
Thank you, Mr.
That's
Bush.
it.
Questions for Mr. Bush? Thank you very much, sir. Anybody else like to address the committee? Anybody else? Nobody online? So no more public testimony. Committee, the appropriate motion would be to move the name of Michael Robinson forward to the full Senate for consideration.
I would so move.
So move, motion by Senator Landon. Senator Boner couldn't be with us today. He's at another meeting. I should have mentioned that earlier. But any discussion on the motion? Senator Scott.
Mr. Chairman, I am concerned about what we're seeing happening to our grid and happening to the future results in the electricity area. And I would frankly like to see a good deal more aggressive leadership out of the Public Service Commission. I realize they have to sit in judgment in some of these matters, and that does inhibit things a little bit, Mr. Chairman. But these are the guys in our state government that really deal with this set of issues all the time. And, Mr. Chairman, I don't think it rises to the level of wanting to vote no on this nomination. But I would like to see on the part of the commission as a whole, more leadership, because I think if we just do business as usual and wait to see what happens, we're going to have a smash that's going to cause electricity customers right across the board to have troubles because of lack of reliability. And I think the ones where the rates are going to be affected by what goes on out in the West Coast may get really hurt. I've seen some projections that really skyrocket those electric rates. And I don't think we ought to sit idly by, and maybe it's our responsibility, but Mr. Chairman, we need better advice from the commission.
Okay, thank you, Senator Scott. Anybody else? So, Mr. Luthi, I think I know all three of your commissioners at the Public Service Commission very well, and they are all extremely capable and intelligent. But to Senator Scott's point that they're not exactly the most aggressive individuals. Is that fair? I'd say they're kind of passive, and maybe that's appropriate. That's absolutely appropriate for a adjudicatory commission. So, but I do share that the policy future is very scary, and maybe we can help to backfill that more, maybe not as aggressive as I might prefer. I'm not saying that's bad, but with help from your office, working with the committee in the energy area as we move forward this interim. I'd like to see that. And that's not a comment on Mr. Robinson, who I know is a fine jurist, yeah. But it does seem like the commission is a bit passive, if I can be blunt. Senator Scott.
And being blunt and frank, I don't think that we can live with the direction we're headed right now. But if we have to change it on our own, we're likely to use clubs with spikes in them. And we
You
may
might have
well
seen a
get,
little of that this session.
we may well get a much better approach if we have some advice from the real experts as to what in the heck we really ought to do. Because it, as I see this evolve, it looks to me like it is not going to be in our constituents' interests at all. And on a scale that we need to do something about.
Yes.
So, and I think, Mr. Chairman, we need to do something about it relatively rapidly.
Yeah.
So I would hope we would get better leadership out of the commission.
And understand, of course, the commission is an adjudicatory
Yeah.
entity, and it has pending cases in front of it that it must maintain ex parte neutrality, you know, and so it's not in a position to give policy advice to the legislature. It's not its role. A commission that I worked on, we had a policy shop. And so it allowed us, and I was head of that policy shop. So it was a different organization. This is very different. We need to respect that. So don't take these criticisms too harshly, but we do need help. All that being said, though, I'm prepared to support this nominee, and I would ask for a roll call vote. We'll have Senator Boner be excused.
Senator Barlow? Aye. Senator Boner?
Excused.
Senator Landon?
Aye.
Senator Scott?
Aye.
And Mr. Chairman?
Aye, happily so. So congratulations. We look forward to working with you, and we appreciate His Excellency for putting your name forward. And these are very important times in Wyoming, and we all know it. So bring up your next victim, Policy
Mr.
Director
Chairman.
Luthi. Thank you very much, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Ornelas, if you would join us. And Mr. Chairman, I might say I did notice that while you were addressing the PSC Commissioner, I was getting the direct look for some of those last comments. It did not go unnoticed, so thank you for that.
Thank you, Policy Director Luthi. Mr. Ornelas, welcome to the committee. I'm going to swear you just like I did before. So it's, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you give before this committee will be the truth?
I do.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ornelas. I would hope that you would give us an opening statement, and we'll give you a little leeway to go a little longer. We've never met you before, so.
Mr. Chairman, would you allow me to introduce
Oh, I'm so
him?
sorry. I didn't mean to jump over the big guy. Back to you for the introduction, Mr. Luthi. Thank you.
That is fine. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thanks for the opportunity to introduce to you the interim Director of the Office of Consumer Affairs, Anthony Ornelas. Before you is a very experienced, qualified candidate to be the actual and the permanent Director of the Office of Consumer Affairs. As you know, the office is independent of the Public Service Commission and was established to assure that the views of Wyoming consumers that are affected by the actions of the PSC are made known to the PSC. Mr. Ornelas is most qualified to be the director. He has been serving in OCA since 2013. He knows the issues, he knows the process, and he understands the need to present the consumer's point of view. Now, despite his very youthful appearance, there is plenty of experience, but the youthful appearance, what might be just a little sensitive with me, I don't know. You know, Tony has been in state government since 2006. He was the principal appraiser in the Department of Revenue and an appraiser for the right-of-way group for the Department of Transportation. And before that, he was in the private sector as a banker. He's a graduate of the University of Wyoming, and I'm glad to say Tony is a Wyoming boy. The governor is most pleased to nominate him to be the director of OCA.
Thank you, Mr. Luthi. Any questions for Mr. Luthi? Mr. Ornelas, we would certainly like to hear your opening statement. Tell us a little bit about your background, and you're welcome to take your time on this.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chairman.
Pull that microphone close. They're very.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chairman, and other members of the committee. My name is Anthony Ornelas. Thank you for that wonderful introduction by Mr. Luthi. Born and raised Wyoming, it was said. I've had the great pleasure and honor of working at the Wyoming Office of Consumer Advocate for the last decade under the guidance and mentoring of the original founders, Mr. Freeman and Miss Denise Parrish, which I believe some of you are quite familiar with. Unfortunately, through to retirement, we have a large hole to fill in the agency, and big shoes to fill. But I am very honored and humbled in the Governor Gordon's asking me to try to fill those shoes. And I look forward to the challenge, and a challenge it will be. And I like to put that up there up front. In the last 2 years, we've lost 100 years of institutional experience and knowledge. In the last few months, we've lost both of our rate analysts, one to a Wyoming utility and one to a different state agency. So right now we're not at full capacity. When we were founded in 2003, we were founded with 6 members. That's 2 rate analysts, 2 staff attorneys, a deputy administrator, and the administrator, both of which act as lead analysts and provide expert testimony before the Wyoming Public Service Commission. Right now, we're currently at 3 staff members with 2 staff attorneys and myself. So we have a long road ahead of us, and I'm very keenly aware of the challenges that lie ahead. But I'm hopeful and optimistic in the way forward. Earlier in your conversations with Deputy Chair Robinson, you touched on a lot of the critical issues that are going to be facing Wyoming and the utility industry as a whole. I don't think that the commission will look the same tomorrow or in 5 years as it probably did 5 years ago. We're going to need to rethink perhaps how we approach this, maybe in the level of aggression, maybe in the level of qualification and positions that we bring on. But I'm excited and, like I say, eager to try to think outside the box a little bit and see if we can't meet the challenges of tomorrow. So with that, again, I'm just very honored to be here and thankful for the nomination and happy to address any questions you might have with me.
Okay, questions for the gentleman? We'll start Senator Landon.
So, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'd ask the same question that I did before, which is look out ahead a little bit. And 5 years from now, if we're sitting here again someday, what will we be reminiscing about on the consumer front? What are your concerns? What are your predictions? Just from the 30,000-foot view, what are you hearing from other consumer advocates across the country? What's coming up?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. Senator Landon. What a great question and not an easy answer. There is no shortage of issues that's going to be facing both the industry as a whole and Wyoming ratepayers. From my perspective, the largest, most critical issue is always customer affordability. Next, maybe only to reliability and safety of the services that are provided. That is across the board. I'm hearing that from my constituents and other advocacy offices as well. We are seeing a very rapid change in the technology and the rollout of how electricity is both generated and distributed and consumed by electric consumers. So my office, the OCA, we have been engaged to the greatest extent possible, given our resources, and will continue to do so and try to be ever more engaged in these very important topics. There's going to be a large push for the development of a West-wide regional transmission organization, or an RTO. As was mentioned, there are resource sufficiency programs being undertaken right now. Western Resource Adequacy Program is one of them that come to mind. Our largest utility, being Pacific Corp, operating as Rocky Mountain Power, has committed to the California ISO, or Independent System Operated, to join their what they call EDAM, or Enhanced Day Ahead Mechanism Program, which will help pool Western resources amongst, I think it's up to 30 utilities at this point, in order to provide load or generation diversity and the ability to transfer excess power or balancing needs amongst different geographic locations in the Western grid. So none of those are going to come easily. There's a lot of governance issues. None of them are going to be free. Reliability has a cost is kind of a famous saying that's been in our office for a long time. we can make it 99.9% reliable, but I'm not sure any of us are going to want to pay that cost. So trying to figure out how to wrap all of these and contain the affordability is going to be a very critical issue for moving forward.
Senator Scott?
Mr. Chairman, couple of questions, if I may. This is the Office of the Consumer Advocate. Seems to me you've got several different classes of customers. One of the ones I hear from is some of the industrial customers that are complaining about the rates that are charged here in Wyoming and comparing us unfavorably to elsewhere. What can you say about what their needs are and what needs to be done, and how valid are those complaints, and is there anything practical we can do about them?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. Senator Scott, appreciate that question. Our office is unique amongst a lot of other advocates across the country and throughout the West, in that we do represent all classes of a customer, from the largest industrial down to the smallest residential. This isn't always an easy balancing act. I will say that up front. What is material issue to an industrial customer is certainly different than it is to a residential or even a small commercial customer. To try to answer more specifically on some of the perhaps issues or concerns you're hearing from the large industrial customers, I think we've historically had a very good relationship with them. Oftentimes they choose to represent themselves in contested matters. And I certainly understand for most of them, the electricity bill they pay every month is one of their largest costs of doing business. So it's every penny, every dollar counts to them. However, Wyoming has been fortunate over the last decade or so in that we do have one of the lower electricity rates in the nation. And it still is a good place to do business. With that said, we have taken a lot of proactive steps to try to encourage future development. Blockchain comes to mind. One of those applications came before us just a handful of years, and I think you guys are familiar with the power consumption needs that these type of consumers can put on the grid. We need to balance that interest, both represent a potential BCIS customer, but also understand the potential rate impacts that if we don't establish a tariff correctly or the rates correctly, the impacts that could have on a residential or small commercial if they don't stick around for 30 years, or if the dynamics of blockchain or Bitcoin mining change, which causes them to change their business strategies. The same can be said for some other bills or proposals that have come before us here recently, such as deregulated zones, allowing our large industrials to buy their own power or introduce behind the meter power. It takes a lot of consideration and a lot of balancing. We fully support the ability of them to procure their own business or have distributed generations, but we must do it in a way that holds other customer and other customer classes harmless. So it really is a balancing act, and we always look forward and encourage any large customer to work with us, to contact us, to work collaboratively and try to reach a place that works for both sides of that coin.
Senator Scott?
Mr. Chairman, in percentage terms, how does the large industrial customer load in Wyoming compare with the residential commercial load?
Mr.
Thank you,
Orlonis?
Chairman. Senator Scott. I don't have a specific or exact answer sitting here today, and it would vary based on the utility itself. As I'm sure you're aware, Rocky Mountain Power, I believe it's roughly 2/3 of their demand in the state of Wyoming is large commercial and industrial loads. The same would not be said for a Cheyenne Light Fuel and Power or Black Hills Energy. They do have a large industrial and commercial presence, but not to that level and degree. Powder River Energy Resource Corp., which is the only rural electric cooperative that we directly oversee or regulate by the PSC. They also have a very large industrial load presence given the CBM and other extraction industries in that area. So it really does vary by utility and across the state.
Follow up?
This is an entirely different question, Mr.
Go right ahead.
one of the criticisms that you hear of public use service commissions, public utility commissions nationwide is that they tend to get captured by the industry they regulate, the large power companies in particular. And looking at it in human terms, you can understand why, because the people that can afford the time and the expense of intervening in the kind of formal processes that you all have, that's mostly the power companies. Sometimes big industrial customers, but mostly the power companies themselves. And so that's the side of the story they hear all the time. And they don't hear so much from the residential customer who can grumble about the power bill but can't do anything about it. How does, and so it's you can see that kind of capture as a natural human consequence of the structure. What does your office do to try to counter that and put some balance into that?
Mr. Ornelas.
Thank you, Chairman. Senator Scott. Another very important consideration and question, and you hit it directly on the head. The ones that intervene are the most sophisticated, largest customers, or the power companies themselves. And from my perspective, that is the critical nature of our office, both in the state of Wyoming and across the region and the nation, is we do need an advocate group or office, whether they're an independent division of a commission such as us or stand alone through some organization. But we effectively are that voice for the small customer or unsophisticated customer. Most of us, if they're even like me, don't even really look at their utility bills until there's a problem. So we try to find those problems in advance. In a rate case, we try to flush out any excess that we believe a utility is trying to capture in rates, and we make recommendations to remove that. We look at the class cost of service studies to figure out how utility costs are spread amongst the utility classes to ensure they're fair and equitable. And in some cases, we do recommend rate subsidies if one particular class is just too aggressively harmed by what should be their full cost of service. So, I mean, those are the most immediate and direct impacts that our office has. And we do that not only through general rate reviews and the establishment of the actual rate cases, but through things such as a multi-state protocol that you spoke of a little bit earlier, a regional transmission organization process or study. All these things factor into it because eventually they all trickle down to rates. And so, you know, that is our role. And beyond that, we welcome, encourage, and do our best to work with community members and interested stakeholders to try to get the message, try to get the education, and to answer any questions we have to alleviate what concerns we can.
Thank you. Senator Barlow? I'm going to have a few questions, if you don't mind. Would you mind telling me a little bit about your education background? I heard that you worked as appraiser in revenue and can't remember where else, but would you mind? Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. No, I hold a Bachelor of Science in Finance, graduated from the University of Wyoming. My emphasis in those studies was real estate financing. That is the only degree that I hold. Thereafter, I've worked as a commercial lender with extensive knowledge in credit underwriting, worked in property appraisals, have extensive experience in appraisal education before switching or pivoting my career trajectory. And then for the last, well, before that, I was with the Department of Revenue, and I really was my main focus involved in cost of capital financing studies, which is one of the largest or most impactful elements of establishing utility rates. So sure. In my opinion, I believe that's why my predecessors brought me on board 10 years ago, was with that experience and knowledge. And that's where I really began my run with the PSC, is doing cost of capital studies. And
that was supposed to be my first job too.
Yep.
For Illinois Power, cost of capital. Yeah.
Absolutely. With an agency of 6, however, you know, we really need to be jack of all trades in this world. And
yeah.
I like to say, so then the education turned to Michigan State Institute of Public Utility, where I've completed several courses ranging from revenue requirement to cost allocation, service, rate design, transmission studies, and ongoing education with the regional transmission organizations, other advocacy groups, and affiliates across the country.
Are you part of NARUC?
Yes, sir, we are.
Do you have a committee appointment?
Thank you, Chairman. No, not as of yet. Thought it might be wise to make sure I was appointed or confirmed to the job, and to be completely honest, need to try to fill a body or two to free up an ounce of time for me to lend that.
That's
to
the
the
National
organization.
Association of Regulatory Utility Commissioners, and Michigan State program is part of their program. I am astounded that it's you and two lawyers that are and so I think about when a commission has an activity in front of it. And I came from a big commission, second largest in the country. And I mean, we had people just assigned to companies or just assigned to rate design in companies, or and even when there wasn't a contested hearing or a rate case. So a couple things happen in Wyoming I appreciate your input on. I've noticed that we have a lot of negotiated settlements in our world in the electricity area, where they don't really battle it out in hearings, and there are some, but a lot of times they come to an agreement. And I've always wondered about, are we going into negotiated settlements because we lack resources? And I can't even imagine. We always had more rate people and experts than lawyers, and you're upside down on that. But I can't even imagine how you participate in a general rate case. And so if we don't have someone building a record, and we've heard in Wyoming, you don't get a lot of interveners. You get the utilities going to be at the proceeding. The industrial consumers are going to be covered at the proceeding. That's going to be it. And the commission, because of the way we do rules now, they're not going to have any of their own people provide testimony behind a Chinese wall. I mean, I guess you could, but it's unlikely. So then it comes down to the Office of the Consumer Advocate to build the record. Pretty much it. And so a recommendation or requirement has got to come from your testimony, and you're just one guy. I feel like you're David against Goliath here, and with two open positions, and this is kind of troubling. I appreciate your thoughts on that. I'm really big about we need a record. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Nope, thank you, Chairman. I will try to hit on several points. If I miss anything, please let me know. I'm going to begin with your question about negotiated settlements. It has been my experience that we're generally, the outcome of a negotiated settlement, and a lot of times outweighs what I think we would get through a fully contested hearing.
Okay.
And I can give you a quick point in case example is in a recent Cheyenne Light Fuel and Power Electric case, we had several interveners, including the Office of Consumer Advocate. A lot of complex issues, a lot of new issues not previously heard before the commission. Through a negotiated settlement process, we were able to reach a comprehensive settlement with all of the parties, which actually resulted in a general rate increase that was lower than both what the company had originally requested or what any other intervening party, including the OCA, had recommended on their own. So I think getting some minds in the room together, talking through the issues, seeing what's possible, practical, and reasonable sometimes does provide the best outcome. So I don't believe it's a shortcut for any process.
Okay, fair enough.
I appreciate your recognition of the resource concerns. On an individual basis, beyond customer affordability, that is my largest concern at the moment. That is what keeps me up at night. As you heard the Deputy Chair Robbins speak of, it's not even the matter of applications and open positions. Once I am able to find somebody, it is a steep learning curve, unlike any other industry I've worked in. And my personal opinion is you're thinking 2-3 years just to reach a general level of proficiency, let alone really gain the in-depth expertise knowledge on some of the matters we've spoke of today. So it is going to be an ongoing concern and issue for several years. I can tell you, sitting in my chair currently, trying to continue to be a tip of the spear, so to speak, I've recently issued 4 RFPs to 17 different consulting agencies or firms around the country in hopes of enticing some solicitations for various parts and pieces. As of tomorrow, I will have 2 general rate cases that'll be filed by 2 different utility companies and 2 different industries. So that gives you an idea of where we're heading. Here in a couple months, I will have a 3rd rate case filed by yet a different utility. So we'll have 3 concurrent rate cases, and I wish I had a direct answer for you, but late nights, weekends, whatever we got to do is what we've been doing to try to keep the ball rolling there. And I've been working closely with the commissioners just in communications on what level of intervention we realistically are going to be able to do. And there has been some dockets where we otherwise would be in, but we're just resource constrained. So I'm trying to be upfront with the commissioners in case they decide that they do want to either hire consultants themselves or assign staff as their own intervention team, which would provide recommendations and direct testimony to complete the record. But that is a decision that is not made at my level.
Fair enough. Go ahead, Senator Landon.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for allowing me to kind of jump in on this front. I've been sitting here being just as concerned as you are, and this whole human resource piece, your generation has that to deal with, and I've run into it on every committee over the past 3 years. Every single committee has issues on this front, and my curiosity is this: have you given any thought to how you might go about filling those seats? And do you have, on this human resource front, any of the flexibility you might need for a new workforce? Workers are demanding, expecting different things nowadays, and I wonder, not just in your area of the world, but on out into the entire rest of the executive branch and the judiciary branch, what are we going to do to hire people up and coming? Where do you get them? And talk about the flexibility piece.
Thank you,
Mr.
Chairman.
Morales.
Senator Landon. Another great question, and I wish I had a better and more direct and easy answer. I've heard the same thing, not only in other agencies amongst this state, but when I travel to other regional forums or advocacy meetings. In fact, tomorrow I'll be heading out to what's called a critical current issues forum with a lot of state regulators, other advocacy offices, and I'll be giving a quick introduction talk about this very topic, about the challenges we're facing. And again, I don't have the silver bullet, but we're hopefully going to put our heads together at these type of forums to try to address it. And some of the things, just internally that we've looked at is trying to appease to the younger generation, whether it's a flexible work schedule, a hybrid in the office, at home schedule.
A pony.
One, sorry?
A pony.
Yep. Anything I need. One of the challenges we find is, I call it hallway chatter. That's really where the young, brand new employees learn. It's difficult to have that from an at-home work setup. So trying to balance that. But we will be recruiting everywhere we can. Obviously, we go through the ANI website. I have had success at getting some applicants. Some of them have been less than qualified. So it really is a challenge due to the niche. So we might be starting at ground floor and taking the years to train them through Michigan State Institute, through ongoing education. I've also reached out to other advocacy offices to see if there's ways that we could try to think about pooling our resources, such as one of the major issues you've heard of is regional transmission organization, and that becoming a bigger and bigger issue for not just the state of Wyoming, but all Western states. So trying to see if there's a way to pool those resources either through a consulting pool, or I will be also perhaps be looking to add a position as well, focused strictly on regional transmission related issues. But seeing if we could do some sort of multi-state collaborative and resource training, resource pooling. But I think if anybody had the silver bullet, we wouldn't be asking these questions.
Thanks for that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You know, I had kind of planned a long series of parlays back and forth about small customer generation, building this record, and the levelized cost of electricity versus the levelized avoided cost of electricity, and just different questions that I was kind of trying to get your take on. Very technical. But that's not really appropriate. And I can see that in my own mind, one of the worst things we could do is to not approve this candidate for this office because he is all we got. And I don't mean that in a pejorative sense at all. What I mean is your expertise being there 10 years, we couldn't possibly have you not be there going forward, but we need you to have more resources is my takeaway from this, because it's just not adequate. And you're going to be supporting this committee in the interim about some of these policy decisions. Well, it's true. So Senator Scott.
Mr. Chairman, following up on recent discussion, the longer I'm in, the more concerned I've been getting about the combination of our human resource department and A&I just not working successfully in combination with some of the restrictions the Joint Appropriations Committee puts on that aren't in the formal budget, but are in the budget process that restrain what we can pay people. And Mr. Chairman, you've got, 3 professional vacancies and a 6-member staff. Are we at the point where our systems for recruiting and selecting and paying people are so inadequate that we need to consider committee legislation exempting you from some of these requirements and getting you out from under the A&I? Is it that bad, or what do we need to do? Because it's working, it's just not working, and it's not just your agency, it's across a broad spectrum.
I wish there was a transparent panel there and I could see who's kicking who under that table right now. I assume nobody's kicking anybody, but that's a powerful question, kind of loaded.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Senator Scott. Well, I think a silver lining perhaps for us, and it's a small silver lining, is that we are funded through a general assessment that's passed through the utilities. Ultimately, that goes back to ratepayers. So there's always a balancing act, no matter what I do. Last time we looked, we were somewhere in the range of 7 cents to about a dime is what we estimated our cost was for the average ratepayer. So
Is
I
that
think
per
there's-
year?
I'm sorry?
Per year, per month?
Per year, yes.
Per year.
So I think there's room for us to expand, and we may be looking to do some of that, both in the type of positions that we hire and to some extent the pay range, trying to push that a little bit. I can tell you my last analyst, who was the most senior analyst, she did leave to another utility for pay reasons is the short and simple of it. And I won't divulge those, but it was quite a bit higher than the opportunities presented in Wyoming. So is it a fully lost cause? I hesitate to say that. I do think there's going to have to be some innovation and some creativity and some expansion perhaps of skills or benefits or other opportunities to try to really entice the young professionals that we're going to need to backfill the loss of experience that all agencies are currently seeing.
Thank you so much. And I think we'll give an opportunity for others to weigh in. Anybody online? Anybody in the audience like to address Mr. Winnie? You weren't in the Navy by chance, were you, Mr.
This is where you need the oath.
Yeah, and so, Mr. Winnie, we do have an oath that we give to people testifying. So it's, do you swear or affirm the testimony you give before this committee will be the truth?
I do.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, just kind of reflecting on the 2 conversations you've had, or the 2 nominees you've had in front of you, one of the things you need, and you were just talking about it right here, is you need an engineer on that guy's staff, and you're going to have to pay him. One of the issues you got, Senator Scott asked about reliability. every time you take a steam turbine off the line and replace it with a solar panel or wind turbine generator, you lose rotational inertia in the system. In other words, its ability to respond when a big load gets dumped on it. And there's ways to get around that. But I don't hear any engineers in the conversations of either of these guys, and you're going to have to pay for them. Subject to questions, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Winnie. Those big spinners are pretty important to grid reliability, that's for sure.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to testify? Anybody else? All right, I think we're done with testimony. The chairman would entertain a motion on this candidate that we forward his name to this full Senate for consideration.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we forward Mr. O'Nallis's name for the Office of the Consumer Advocate Directorship to the full Senate.
Okay, any discussion?
You know,
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, just real quickly, I don't want to leave this topic yet because I think it is one of the more important ones that I've run across over the past few months and really highlighted today how much in jeopardy some of our agency folks are under with respect to being able to get their jobs done. So I'm looking at Mr. Luthi now, and I think all of us need to get as creative as we possibly can be. If it is too restrictive under A&I, for example, like the senator pointed out, I think we have to be willing to look at things differently and not sure all of what that means, but I would just encourage whatever ideas you can give to us on the legislative front. We stand ready to try to enact anything that might help. It's a new frontier out there. I know a little bit about what I'm talking about because I have two wonderful boys. One's an engineer, and the other one is in a company up in the state north of us and doing very, very well. And both of them hire and manage people your age to the new director. So I love listening to them, and they're doing some creative things to get people. We may have to do the same thing. So thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Mr.
Chairman.
Senator Scott.
Mr. Chairman, and I would emphasize in this, I think part of the fault with our problems are in the budget process, where it's something that doesn't appear in the statute, but there's limitations put on hiring and pay grades and whatnot that are part of the process and are enforced by the JAC, but which do not appear in the statutes. And I think so. I think we're part of the problem, Mr. Chairman. I'm not quite sure how we get at it, but I see this right across the whole sweep of the state government. I see it in game and fish in particular.
So, what I would prefer to do is we have a motion about his nomination, and then we might hang around a little bit with everybody and have a more open discussion if that's preferable. But I would like to have the roll call on the moving Mr. Ornalis's name to the full Senate for consideration.
Senator Barlow. Aye. Senator Boner.
Excused.
Senator Landon.
All right.
Senator Scott.
Aye.
And Mr. Chairman.
Aye. So you're both a shoe-in, and I'm grateful. I'm grateful to the governor's office and your excellency. I do seriously think there's a resource problem here with comparing our frontline troops and the issues that we're up against in the electricity world. And I see it more in the commission, Mr. Luthi, and the Office of OCA than I do anywhere else. And I'm very sensitive to that about what's happening right now. And so I don't know how we can work through this, but it's astoundingly critical. And so if, they're funded by the Public Utility Assessment, so there is some money available, but boy, it doesn't seem to be working. And I will guarantee you that having one very sharp director and two attorneys supporting all of these things that are coming down the pipe, including supporting this committee, it's a very touchy situation. And I'm sure you guys already know that. But just the next Rocky Mountain Power rate case is going to be astounding. And Senator Landon.
So, Mr. Chairman, I was just looking at the back of the room there. We've got 4 really good up and
If
coming
they could get their applications in.
professionals. I'm telling you, I think they're about ready. So, Director, you're all set, maybe.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Scott.
for the governor's office, I would say I think this is a much broader problem than just this Public Service Commission. I've seen problems in the health department. I've seen problems in transportation,
Sure.
spades right now.
Well, we could,
And that's not necessarily at the professional level. Some of that's at the, truck driver, plow operator, maintenance, highway maintenance level. I've seen it in the game and fish, and how competitive they are not with some of the other states. It's a much broader set of problems than just 1 or 2 commissions. There's something radically wrong in our system, and we need to have something done about it.
well, and frankly, though, Senator Scott, I will defend government a little bit. It's a problem in all our industries all across Wyoming. It's not just a government problem. But I will say, in this case, if I could direct $1 million to support both these agencies on an annual basis to try to fill these gaps, it'd be money well spent in our future. We're up against, in the electricity world, we're up against states in the 6-state protocol that no one thinks like we do. And we may be the only ones that are trying to make these big baseload plants work, but also we're in a minority. And Wyoming can't do it by themselves. It's not. And we have this situation where everyone has been telling us that the renewables are more less expensive, and they are on one measure of the levelized cost of electricity. But because they require also companion backing up, and that's more where you get the example of the levelized avoided cost of electricity, we're running into a serious problem. And we were so lucky before because we transitioned as far as we got with renewable energy. At the same time, we had some remarkable technology breakthroughs like LED light bulbs and just astounding changes in demand. But we're now at the point where we don't really have those economies, and now renewables are a serious piece of the grid, and we haven't figured out how to make them reliable. New technologies of battery, pump storage, nuclear power, hydrogen, they're not reachable right now. So it's scary. It's dang scary. Back to you, Senator Landon.
Well, really appreciate all those thoughts, Mr. Chairman. I don't want anyone to go away, and Mr. Luthi, no criticism whatsoever was intended by anything I brought up. It's just brainstorming. And it's certainly not easy, but it sounds like the Corporations Committee needs to be ready. And I think we are, under the chairman's leadership, to be ready to support anything that the 3 of you or anyone else in the room. I'm looking back at Mr. Bush. We've got good folks around. We just need to not be afraid to maybe be creative, huh? And we can draft a bill, Mr. Luthi.
I know bills need people too. So, Mr. Luthi, thank you very much for the courtesies today, and give our best to the governor. We appreciate and will support his wisdom in these nominees. And thank you for coming, sir.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And you and members of the committee are known for your subtlety, so I believe I did pick it up.
Well, it's not a criticism, really. We're all
Not at
at the
all.
point of this together. It's a lot of events that have brought us here.
Couldn't agree more. I mean, particularly in those engineering technical fields across multiple agencies,
Yeah.
you all have seen the challenges. So the governor looks forward to working with you. I know I've seen some of the recommendations for the interim, and it's going to be challenging, and we'll be with you lockstep on how to figure out how the answers to some of these So thank you, Mr. Chairman in particular, and members of the committee.
Thank you. All right, we're going to be adjourned. We are going to take up interim topics Tuesday at 12:30 with our friend. Oh, I'm sorry, I said Tuesday, I meant Wednesday, correct? Wednesday at 12:30. There's still room for topics to come forward. I haven't even seen the list myself yet, so I'm sure it's going to be astounding like it was in judiciary. Everybody, thank you all for coming. I hope you have a great rest of your week. We're adjourned.